Hey, football fans, welcome back. We've got a very exciting time of year right now. I tell you what, we just got back from the Balloon Fiesta. It's a great festival here in Albuquerque. I'm sure many of you have attended it. It's fantastic. If you haven't been out there before, highly encourage you to get out and give that a shot. Got to get up a little bit early, got to deal with a little bit of the cold, but this is the perfect time of year to get out and watch some balloons. There's only one other thing I can think of, quite frankly, that I'm actually more excited about than Balloon Fiesta here in Albuquerque, and that would be, oh yes, the New Mexico Young American Football League playoffs are now into the semifinal week. And if you're a football fan, I don't care what level you like watching or playing or whatever you do with football, you can't help but be a fan of this time of year. The weather, crisp, October air. This is exactly where you'd want to be if you're still playing football. You're in a great place because the semifinals are this weekend, and we've got some fantastic matchups. And let's just start off with the Mighty Mite division, which is, it's been a four-team race, really. We've talked about this a lot on the show, and it's really nothing we didn't expect to see happen. La Cueva got the bye. Obviously, Coach Olivas, his team, just kind of sitting a couple weeks to prep. And then Sue Cleveland and Coach Birch kind of went through an end-of-year slump, losing their last three games against really quality opponents, no doubt about it, La Cueva, West Mesa, and Volcano Vista. But it was just the manner in which it went down. Just little by little, they were losing some close games, and then finally at the end, they just got blown out. I just think you got a team that was just kind of running on fumes at the end of the year. Wondering what they bring to the playoffs with Atrisco, Berlin kind of sitting out there. And they came and they played really, really well. And not unusual that they had a blowout win, got themselves into the semifinals against La Cueva. A rematch when they were 5-0 and La Cueva was coming in on a really a great winning streak at the time. And they ended up upending Cleveland and moving on and continuing to win out and become the one seed. On the other side of the bracket, Volcano Vista and Coach Gonzalez and this West Mesa Mustang team, which I just tell you what, I don't know why I'm so enamored with them, but they are just so good under Coach Aguilar. These guys get to meet on the other side of the semifinal. And I don't know, this whole thing right here has kind of shaken out exactly what I would have hoped. I'm kind of licking my chops on these last couple of games of the year for these little guys, these 7-year-olds. So, if I'm kind of throwing out some predictions right now, I just think La Cueva is just too hot right now. They're on that turf field. They haven't been out there before. So Cleveland, has had a little bit of stumble at the end of the year. I like La Cueva moving in on this game. I think this will be a lot closer than what people might first think. I do think La Cueva will come out one touchdown or so victory and move their way into the Super Bowl. On the other side, I really like West Mesa here to go ahead and move on, advance into the Super Bowl round against La Cueva in the championship. And really, I think this one, and Coach Gonzalez has got a very, very good Volcano Vista team. I just think West Mesa got hot at exactly the right time. I like a couple touchdowns here, and West Mesa kind of skirting into the Super Bowl round against La Cueva. So what I see happening on Super Bowl Sunday will be in the Mighty Mite level, La Cueva West Mesa for the championship. All right, welcome back. So we move on from the Mighty Mite division into the Pee Wees, probably one of the most entertaining divisions I've kind of been a part of all year long. I haven't had the opportunity, privilege to be able to watch some of these games, and you've got some really dynamic teams here. And again, this has kind of still been the kind of same thing we've been talking about. There's usually a few teams that kind of been kind of dictating the pace of the game, if you will, throughout the season. We have no really change in that when we move on to the Pee Wee division. So we'll just get right to it. Again, the semifinals, just an exciting time of year to play football. And we have some very intriguing matchups this weekend. And we're going to start off here with the Volcano Vista Hawks, Coach Gonzalez, and the Albuquerque Bulldogs and Coach Martinez in a rematch from the game of the week in week 3 when these two met, and it was somewhat of a lopsided victory. Coach Gonzalez and his squad ended up coming out ahead. When you think about this Volcano Vista team, and we've talked about the Snacks and Smash show pretty much all year long, I think one thing you do forget about when you think about this team is just how good the trenches are. And, Coach Gonzalez spoke to this really early on. First thing I asked him, what should I be looking for in your team? He didn't go to a player. He didn't go to a side of the ball. He went right to the line. He said, look, our game is defined by our front line on offense and our front line on defense. And so go they, so go us. And I just really liked the way he talked about, how games are won and lost kind of in the trenches for their team. And if you've had a chance to watch them, some dynamic athletes for sure, but they have some massive linemen who know what they're doing, some great coaching from his staff. And that's what makes this team so dangerous, is just they're so good along the front to the back, and it's going to be a tough game, really, I think, for Coach Martinez and his Bulldogs. Kind of looking, following this group, they're a lot of fun to watch, too. And had a really good game against Las Lunas up there in Berlin in their quarterfinal. And, to Coach Martinez's point, no one believes but us. And I think you have to think that way, because you're going up against this powerhouse Volcano Vista team. And I agree with you, Coach Martinez. Not many people believe you can get this one done. Not that I don't believe in your squad. I think you're going up against a real tall challenge here on this side of the bracket. You look at the other side of the bracket, and you've got the defending Super Bowl champions, and Coach Zamora really got his team playing at a high level. Last week again in Berlin, they took on La Cueva team, who really put up a very stout effort against this Rio Grande team. They end up coming out ahead 18-0. But one thing that kind of struck me about that Rio Grande team is just how talented they are defensively. That defense is extremely good. It kind of had a bend-don't-break attitude. There was a point in that game where La Cueva was on an 8-minute drive, and in Yaffle, they're 10-minute quarters. So you put the math together. They basically took that ball the entire quarter and were closing in on finishing the deal. And Rio Grande just stood up, and I'll tell you, 3 plays later, they go to the house on a 70-yard burst and really take over control of the game. Highland, Coach Salgado. It's not a team I've talked a lot about all year long. They were kind of warming up when I got there, and they had a nice victory as well in their quarterfinal. These two met at the end of the year in a 12-6 victory for Rio Grande over Highland. And what was really, that game could have went any number of directions, and I think you're going to see the exact same thing on Sunday in the semifinal. But I tell you, Highland is a very good team, and they're the only team represented by the Highland Hornets in the Yaffle organization. So a lot of love out to Coach Salgado for making sure we keep that program alive. I can remember back when I was coming through as a coach, young, Highland was dominant throughout all the levels, and now they're just kind of disappearing. But I think Coach Salgado will get some interest back in the programs. But I tell you what, if you're kind of thinking about predictions here, you can't help but take Volcano Vista to go over the Bulldogs and go and advance in the Super Bowl. I will give you this. I do think there's going to be a fight here. I really think this game is going to be won or lost in the first half. I think so goes the first half, and how things kind of shake out there, so goes this game. In the first half of their first meeting, Volcano Vista ran away with it and had a huge lead at halftime, and really from there never looked back. I think if the Bulldogs keep this one close and can get into the second half in range, they have a chance. If they let this game slip away, Volcano Vista knows how to choke you out and will do so. I think this one, Volcano Vista advances. On the other side of the bracket, it's a toss-up game. Had a chance to chat with Coach Sophomore before his game, and I tell you, I just think experience here plays a huge role. Rio Grande's been through these battles, has been through the path. You can't speak enough about a team that has experience like that. So, I'm going to go just off experience alone and not necessarily talent. I think Rio Grande squeaks this one out, and I'm going to even go so far as to say this one comes down to an extra point. One of these two teams are going to miss an extra point. That's going to cost them in some way, shape, or form. But I'm going to take Rio Grande to go ahead and advance on in a really close game down to the wire in the fourth quarter. And I think you'll see Volcano Vista in a rematch. They met twice earlier in the year, and Volcano came out on top both times. But I think they're going to have a rematch here in the Super Bowl. Volcano Vista against Rio Grande in the Pee Wee Division Super Bowl. All right, football fans, welcome back. So we are now moving on to the rookie level. And what this division has been exciting. It's been competitive. There's been upsets. There's been expectations have been met. whatever you can think of about the rookie level, it's happened. And what's cool is this really is the last year that the coaches are allowed on the field. So this will be the last time that they'll play kind of sort of what we call little boy football, and then they'll graduate on to the freshman level next year and play more traditional style with the coaches on the sideline. And so, really, this year's there's been a mix of teams in this thing, and you really can't pinpoint, one team over another. When we think about the semifinals, though, I do think what we thought probably would happen did happen, and we move in here. So, as you remember, Del Norte upset La Cueva week 6, and at that point, if they won out, they were able to secure the 1 seed, which they did. So they come through 7-1 and end up in the 1 slot. Coach Patterson has them playing extremely, extremely well. And what's funny is, you've got Price and Jackson now, 2 really speedy, physical backs coming onto the turf, and just I can't wait to see how those guys get going. Or don't get going, depending on what Sioux Cleveland decides they want to do when they get on the turf against Sioux Cleveland. But Coach Patterson, no kids on the team, and really giving back to the community. I wasn't sure what El Dorado would bring in their quarterfinal game, but Del Norte, with 6 turnovers, was able to kind of turn the tide. And anytime you put the ball on the turf that many times, you're not going to have a lot of success. So Del Norte comes through the quarterfinal now into the semis, and they're going to meet Sioux Cleveland and Coach Shea. Interesting matchup there because those 2 teams met at the end of the year, and really Sioux Cleveland had its destiny in its own hands. They could have shooken up the entire division with a win there. They weren't unfortunately able to come up on top that day, but it was a close game. It was a well-fought game by Coach Shea and his troops, and they get another shot here in the semifinal to see if they can take on this powerhouse Del Norte team and do something about that end-of-season loss. On the other side of the bracket, since the loss to La Cueva, Coach Dow and Valley has been able to string together a 6-game, 5-game winning streak, and has done nothing short of just dominate really that South Division and do a great job of getting themselves into the semifinal, which we pretty much expected they would. Because La Cueva comes in at the 2 slot, 2 on their side, they're able to go across the bracket, and now they're going to meet in the semifinal. La Cueva with a dominating 36-0 victory last week. And Coach Sanchez, again, just a phenomenal job of getting his team back into a very familiar place, which is the semifinals and possibly the Super Bowl. You know the story on La Cueva. They had, a 2-year run there, really going into a 3-year run there where they only lost 1 game to this Sioux Cleveland team and won 2 back-to-back Super Bowls. So that's what Coach Dow and his squad's got to face. If you remember last year, Coach Dow and his squad were upset in the first round, and Coach Patterson and his squad were upset in the first round. I'm sorry, Coach Dow performed an upset and made their way into the championship game against La Cueva, and on the other side, Del Norte and Coach Patterson were upset in the first round, couldn't make it through. So let's look at this thing. So Del Norte, Sioux Cleveland. Could you ask for a more intriguing matchup than those 2 hook and horns again on the turf in the cool October air? I still think Del Norte has enough weaponry in the backfield and enough experience on the defensive side and really a good tackling team to go ahead and advance on into the Super Bowl. I think this thing is going to be a barn burner. I think this thing is going to come down to a couple key things. One, I think turnovers are going to play a huge role. Del Norte able to generate 6 turnovers last week. This week, I think they get a couple. Sioux Cleveland ends up coming just short on this game, and Del Norte drives themselves back, or for the first time, into the Super Bowl. On the other side, the 10-6 victory early in the year in game of the week between these 2, with La Cueva coming out on top against Valley, was really a telling sign. I think Valley realized at that time that they could compete with the top layer teams. And then, of course, Coach Sanchez and La Cueva, I feel like they're hungry again. I feel like they want to win again. And I felt like sometimes you get to the top of the mountain, you get a little complacent, and you forget about those things. This game here, I think, is going to come down to just the experience and the determination of a team who has been down this path. And I really like Coach Dow and his Valley team, but I think they're going to come a little short here on the semifinal game. I think La Cueva is going to find a way again to pull out a win here and squeak into the Super Bowl. I do again think these four semifinals, these two semifinals, are going to be extremely tight. I think penalties, turnovers are going to play a huge role in what goes down here. But I like La Cueva coming in against Del Norte in a rematch of week 6, game of the week, and I like to see one of those two come out on top. But I think in the rookie division, I like to see, or I do think we will see Del Norte against La Cueva in the Super Bowl. All right, football fans, we move on to the freshman division, which, if you've kind of followed the program throughout the year, they're part of the reason I don't have much headgear up here because they keep me awake at night. I don't know from one week to the next who's going to pop their head out and say, hey, I'm the best in this level. And I tell you, the 4 teams that end up making it in was not in my prediction realm. When I first got my bracketology together for this level, I saw a couple of them making it through, but I didn't see kind of where it all shook out. And we got some great matchups, and I'm just proud of a couple teams here for kind of finding their way into this semifinal. And, obviously when you think about this division, the first team that comes to mind, and it's been coming to mind all year long, Coach Dennison and his Sioux Cleveland team come in undefeated, fantastic season, continue to just roll along, defending Super Bowl champs. Really the team to beat when you're thinking about the freshman level. They get a matchup here with Valencia and Coach Cordova, and I'll take a second here. It's been a long time since I can remember a Valencia team finding their way into a semifinal in Yaffle, much less having an opportunity to make a Super Bowl. I'll be honest with you, and some of you old timers might know more than me, but I can't think of a time in the 20 years I've been coaching in Yaffle that Valencia made it into a Super Bowl. That's how big this is right now. What's looming large for Coach Cordova and his squad. And the other side, you think about Coach Gallegos and this Rio Grande team and just what they've accomplished in the last half of the year, making some really strong moves. If you had a coach of the year, this might be the guy to look to. He's been in the league a long time, been through a lot of battles, done a great job over there in the Rio Grande community, keeping youth football alive and kicking, finding his way into semi. And then, of course, Coach Caesar and Volcano Vista on that journey trying to get back into that regional championship level that they went to last year. So let's talk a little bit about the matchup. So here we go. Sioux Cleveland and Valencia. You think about last week and Cleveland just eking out a victory against Volcano Vista East, who I warned you, be careful of that team because they have some ammunition left in the tank with only a few victories, a handful, just a couple. They were able to squeak in the playoffs. That's what made them dangerous. And an 8-7 win here, Coach Dennison escaped the loss there in that first round, which is the kiss of death in that quarterfinal. Was able to get through it. Then you think about Valencia and Coach Cordova, and really what I consider to be a fairly significant upset against Coach Birch and that Sioux Cleveland East team, which had been on a significant roll up until they met Rio Grande in the last game of the year where they lost, and that was even a close game. But you look at this matchup and I think most of football fans are going to go ahead and throw Sioux Cleveland in the Super Bowl. I'll tell you what, I'm going to go a little bit the opposite way. I think it's Coach Cordova and this Valencia team kind of getting hot at the right time are going to find a way in an upset to find their way into the Super Bowl. And the Valencia Jags' first trip in that I can recall at the youth level will happen on Sunday. That is an upset pick for me, but much respect for Coach Dennis and what he's done with the Sioux Cleveland squad. But I do think Valencia might find their way here and finally get into one. On the other side, Rio Grande and Volcano Vista. Rio Grande squeaks in with a 4-overtime victory over Albuquerque High, Coach Blair. That was a class. I told you guys that would be a classic matchup. Those two would battle to the bitter end. It would be a barn burner. That's exactly what it was. But Coach Gallegos back on top, comes into the semi. And the Volcano Vista kind of just, business as usual, man. They just kind of get things done. A good victory for them. Nothing outrageous. They get through. I believe it was 18-zip. They make their way here into the semifinal. And I think on this side, you've got kind of a tried and true. in Coach Caesar and this Volcano Vista team, and they've been down some wars. But I just like the grit and the determination of this Rio Grande Raven team. Anytime their back's been against the wall, they've found a way to win. And I know Coach Gallegos and JD, those two will have this squad prepared. That I can guarantee you. I'm going to go ahead and take Rio Grande, and I think what most would consider to be a small upset here, even though they're the higher seed, into the Super Bowl to play Valencia in the championship game. So at the freshman level, Rio Grande versus Valencia for the championship. All right, football fans. So we move on to the sophomore division, and if you've been kind of following this division, it's really been a three-team race with kind of a fourth team kind of lurking around the corner, kind of hiding in the shadows, if you will, seeing if anybody will notice them. But I have noticed them, and we're going to talk a little bit about this semifinal matchup here between what really is the four best teams in the sophomore level, have been pretty much all year. And, obviously when you think the sophomore division, La Cueva, Coach Kimbrough, and that dynamic team, the Bears, rolling through the season. And really, you think about week 2 when they matched up with defending Super Bowl champ Volcano Vista East Side and ended up with a victory at 24-20. It really was a pretty good game. La Cueva jumped out to a pretty big lead. Volcano comes back, kind of back and forth, and Coach Kimbrough and his squad ends up coming out on top. But since that moment in week 2 where they realized, hey, we are what we think we are, they become that championship kind of looking team, swagger. They walk on the field. You command respect when you do play them. On the bottom side of the bracket, Rio Grande and Coach Smith, this is that team that's been kind of lurking in the shadow, poking their head up every now and then. Hey, you see me? Yeah, Coach Smith, I see you. I see you in your squad. I had a chance to chat with you at Cheerfest, and I tell you, it's a quietly confident team. And there's a couple reasons why I think that's true. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So then you come over the other side in Volcano Vista East and Coach Montgomery. What else can you say? This team has found its way back. Week 2 was their only loss of the season. They've rattled off 6 straight wins, including a victory over Los Lunas at the end of the year, and really continue to play in a very convincing, dominating fashion. And then a quarterfinal just absolutely decimated their opponent and come into this semifinal hot. Los Lunas Coach Caldwell, we know a lot about that team. This is probably their last year in the AFL. One thing I really like about Los Lunas and this team is their defense. We'll chat about that in a minute. Okay, so here we go. Let's do this. La Cueva, Rio Grande, Kimbrough, Smith. End of the year, 12-0 victory for La Cueva over Rio Grande. And at first you think, okay, they won, dude. What are you dwelling on this for? The reason I'm dwelling on it is because that was the most physical game La Cueva had really seen in weeks. And one thing Rio Grande has been known for in the youth football level is physicality. Guarantee you that if you've ever been in youth football against this team, you know Rio Grande is going to bring the heat. And that's exactly what they did here. And I think there was a little bit of a wake-up call here for Coach Kimbrough that, look, we need to get back to the drawing board about what made us so great this year and start playing at that level. I think Rio Grande really kind of woke them up, and I really like the way Coach Smith's defense plays. I like the way that they tackle. I think they're extremely intelligent. Offensively, obviously they're going to need a little bit of help. I think a turnover or two might make this game a little closer. But honestly, at the end of the day, I think La Cueva is just too many athletes, just too much talent, too much size. And I think they're going to come out of this thing and not necessarily convincing fashion, but I think a couple of touchdowns here or maybe a little more. The only way this game gets interesting and competitive is if Rio Grande can find a way to strip that ball out of La Cueva's hands or pick the ball off and grind out drives, keep it out of their hands. I think that's how Rio Grande stays in this game. But on that turf and 2 weeks rest for this level of football, that is just a nice formula for La Cueva to go ahead and continue on winning and make their way back into the Super Bowl where they were last year. On the other side, East Side Volcano Vista with Coach Montgomery rolling, absolutely rolling, red hot, going against this Los Lunas team that's had a couple of up and down battles here, but really the only time they've lost has been to La Cueva and Volcano Vista East. And, the thing I really think Los Lunas that separates them from everybody else, they're not a powerful, high, flying, scoring, fast break offense. That's not their style. This is a traditional ground and pound. My defense is going to win the game for you. I'm going to control the football. You're not going to get the football, and that's how we're going to win. So I think for Los Lunas to compete against what the opposite of what they are, which is this high flying, fast break, shotgun spread offense that Coach Montgomery brings to the table, there's only one way Las Lunas is going to be able to beat this team, and that is you got to keep that offense off the field. There's no doubt about that. If that Volcano Vista East offense stays on the field, this game is over and in a hurry. And I think when you look at this matchup, I just still think on turf, experience, and the way they've been playing, I just think Volcano Vista East has too many things going on, too many weapons. And I do think Volcano Vista East kind of comes through this game. I do think that Los Lunas will hold them down a little bit, but I still like Volcano Vista East to kind of, pretty much, again, a 2-touchdown kind of victory, kind of skirting into the Super Bowl here against La Cueva. And I think you see the rematch we've all been waiting for since week 2. That is Volcano Vista East and La Cueva for the Sophomore Super Bowl 2 Sundays. All right, fans, we move on to the junior level, which, if you've been kind of following the show a little bit, the junior level's been one of the most interesting levels we got. Again, it's been basically a 3-team race all year, but there's been so much intrigue and so many spectacular matchups and just great head-to-head things that are happening in the division. And really, the end of the year was kind of quiet. Everybody kind of went about their business, kind of won out. And really, I had kind of 4 teams in my mind. I had the 3 that you already know about, Rio Rancho, Sioux Cleveland, Volcano Vista. But I had kind of La Cueva sitting on the outside kind of looking in, thinking that, Coach Diego would be able to get his troops kind of moving in, maybe make his way back into the semifinal. So with that said, kind of here's where we stand. And I suppose not surprises and maybe a sort of surprise. So you look at the semifinal matchups, and of course Volcano Vista and Coach Salas. I mean, you can't say enough. 8-0, just one of those teams that I had no idea how much talent they had on both sides of the football. The offensive and defensive lines play extremely well. They're big, they're fast, they're powerful. They've got a quarterback in Salas that is absolutely a field general. Guy knows what he's doing out there. He's a smart player. Should translate really well into the high school level as time progresses. And just a team really that's just moving and rolling all year long, and it really has been hot late. But Volcano Vista North, Coach Mueller. I apologize. Honestly, I know you had a really tight game with the Cueva earlier in the year, and you've played some tight games throughout the year. Kind of had an up and down season. You definitely were under the radar, but you found your way. You end up scoring on the opening play or drive of the game with a pick 6. You convert the 2-point, and that's how the game. That was it. That was all you needed to take care of La Cueva. You end up winning 8-0, and I tell you, I was extremely impressed with your defense. La Cueva was able to air the ball out pretty much the last half of the year. You shut that down. In your game against them when you lost, they were able to do some things against you that you absolutely prepped for and planned for and took care of business. I like the way you get your team ready. I think you cannot be overlooked for darn sure. On the other side, what we thought. Rio Rancho, Coach Manning, defending Super Bowl champions back-to-back, defending regional champion, competing for national championship. We already know the story behind Rio Rancho. We'll talk a minute about that. And then Coach Blake and Sioux Cleveland, have had kind of an up-and-down year when it comes to the top-level talent. They struggled against Volcano Vista late in the year. They had a great game against Rio Rancho and led most of that game, weren't able to finish the deal. So we'll come back on this one. Okay, so here we go. Volcano Vista and Volcano Vista North. So we've got ourselves a west side, if you will, matchup. A lot of Volcano Vista teams representing in Yaffle U Sports, and they translate over to the high school level as Volcano Vista, Sioux Cleveland, and Rio Rancho, as you know, are top 3 teams in the state at the high school level. And there's no wonder why, because they're getting such a good feeder from these youth teams. When you look at this matchup, though, Volcano Vista is just so deep, so talented, well coached, and have got really intelligent IQ football players on the field that have been in Super Bowls. You got to remember those first 3 years, Mighty Mite, Pee Wee, Rookie, this was the team to beat. They didn't lose a game. They won 3 straight Super Bowls and were the team to beat. Took a couple of years to get back on track. And with losses of players and coaches, still Coach Sal's put together this team. And in his words, probably the best team he has and one of the best coaching staffs he's been around since he started doing this, 5 years ago. And I like the fact that Coach Mueller is a prepper. He's that guy to be out there with his camera filming you, taking notes, getting with his coaches, prepping the game, getting his team ready to play football. I think the unfortunate problem here for Coach Mueller is there's just too much talent on this other side of Volcano Vista. Too much depth, too much size, and too much speed. I think when this game right here gets on the turf, I think Volcano Vista is going to show you and you, the fans, just how talented they really are. I like this game, and I like this game in pretty much a convincing fashion with Volcano Vista moving on to the Super Bowl. First time since they were rookies. It's the first time since they were freshmen. So a couple years off, now they're back in. On the other side, Rio Rancho Sioux Cleveland, game of the week. You guys remember that one. It was a barn burner, 16-13 victory for Rio Rancho. And one thing with Rio Rancho, you got to remember, they are one of those teams that you let them hang around, and they're going to find a way to win. You can't let them hang around. And that's the one thing Volcano Vista didn't do, is they jumped out on that early lead, and Rio Rancho had a couple of trips in that red zone, weren't able to finish the deal, but they never really let them kind of back in the game. And that's, if you're going to beat Rio Rancho, you got to kind of do that. You got to jump on them, keep them down, and not let them back in. So Cleveland ended up getting the lead in that first game and basically held on, but you could feel the momentum shifting in that fourth quarter, and finally they were able to get in the end zone and take the lead and really never look back. And so when you think about this matchup between Manny and Blake, I see this being just a dynamic game. Now, so Cleveland has probably arguably one of the best quarterbacks at this level who has been injured. And I don't know what the injury report holds for the semifinal game. My understanding is he may be available to play. And if that's the case, the Sioux Cleveland team takes on a whole different type of meaning. They're going to be able to put the ball in the air, which they've had some struggles doing. They've been able to run the ball, but throwing the ball has kind of been a little bit of a weakness for them as they've been using some backups to kind of get the job done. I still like the fact that Rio Rancho, and again, you guys know me, I'm an experienced guy. I like teams that have been down the path, have been in the wars, have been in the battles, and have the core. I like Rio Rancho in this one, but not in the way you think. I think this game comes down to the fourth quarter, and I think Rio Rancho wins it on something like a turnover, an interception, a pick six, something like that puts them in the end zone to win it. I like them hanging around this game, stirring the pot up, and finally making their way back into the Super Bowl for their third straight trip. I like this game right here to be Volcano Vista sliding in and Rio Rancho sliding in, and rematch of the game of the week in Week 7 when these two hooked up. I like the rematch in the Super Bowl. The junior level, Coach Manning, Rio Rancho, Coach Salas of Volcano Vista. All right. As Boys to Men so eloquently stated, we've come to the end of the road. The Varsity Division semifinal playoffs. I've said it a few different times, kind of a bittersweet time for this level as they move on from youth football to high school football. It goes from innocence to real-time football. And it's just one of those times, I kind of really enjoy these games because these are the ones that kind of finish out, your youth career. And a lot of times you don't even remember. It's the coaches that remember the scores and the plays and this and that. It's the players that remember the moments with their teammates. They remember the moments, and they're not always what you think. It's not the moments where they won a particular game, although that's there too. When they won a particular Super Bowl, that's there too. But sometimes it's just simple things. Do you remember what you said on the sideline when we were in this situation? Do you remember when we had that sleepover? Do you remember this? Do you remember that? And it's those memories and the kind of the things that go along with the varsity division and leaving kind of your childhood behind and moving on to to your young adulthood are very special. So kind of a bittersweet time. But when we think about this division, We've been saying it all year long. I mean, there is no other team right now than West Mesa. I mean, I know everyone thinks they're in the hunt, but unless you prove me wrong, and it's going to take a monster effort to figure out this Mesa team, you're going to have a hard time winning the Super Bowl this year. And you're going to go through this juggernaut, the Mustang team, Coach Montano. But let's talk a little bit about who's in it. So we've got La Cueva, Coach Cherry. Nothing short of 6 straight Super Bowls, heading maybe to 7. 5 of those 6 victories. Only lost to Las Lunas a couple years ago in the Super Bowl. Have met this West Mesa team a few different times. Have been victorious. Coach Cherry again playing really, really well late in the season. Get in through the quarterfinal with a dominating win over Atrisco, 36-0, and able to get in here into the semi. Volcano Vista, Coach Jones. I'm going to be honest with you, didn't see this one coming. Coach Brody and Sue Cleveland played West Mesa, probably the toughest that any team has played them all year long. Had some words with Coach Brody, quietly confident, felt like this is the right side of the bracket to be on to get themselves in position to go, and never really had a conversation about Coach Jones and what they were doing with the Volcano Vista program. And they've done nothing short of put together just a spectacular time to get hot with a 36-32 victory, just absolutely lights out offense, just lighting up the scoreboard against what really was a pretty darn good defense in Sue Cleveland. And I tell you, I was shocked that Volcano Vista had the kind of talent they had to compete where they were. This team has quietly put themselves in position to maybe pull off the upset of the division with a chance to meet Coach Cherry. On the other side, West Mesa, Coach Montano, I mean, you can't say enough about this squad and what Coach has done with not just the talent on the field, but his coaching staff and kind of keeping them mentally focused in what's been just a roll year. I mean, no team has been close. You think you're in it, you're not. You think you're going to make us, you're not. You think you're not. And that's just how the season has been. I mean, you're that kind of team that's prepping for these guys. And I've been down this road. Trust me, I know what it's like. You always prep to win. You can't do anything else. But when the game gets rolling, you just feel it. And right now, I think West Mesa is just dominating and going to be a real challenge. Coach Perry, Rio Rancho East, he has put together year after year after year of successful program in his Rio Rancho East team and just guided them to playoff win and regular season wins and just victory after victory. And I've always struggled as we get into these semifinals. This is really where they haven't been able to finish the deal. And they find themselves, due to a really tough loss against Coach Cherry, 8-6, in a battle of seeds. They only lost one game, but that one game cost them because of a conference schedule issue, and that put them on the other side of the bracket and really put them in a real bind to try to beat West Mesa. And I think what you saw last week when they beat Valley 16-8 wasn't so much that Valley wasn't a tough team. They were. But I think what you saw is Rio Rancho looking ahead. I think what they were trying to figure out is how we're going to beat West Mesa. And when you do that, you put yourself at risk, because in the varsity level, I'm going to tell you, anyone can win on any given day at any given time. Trust me, I know. When we won the Super Bowl those last couple of years, we had a matchup last year against Cibola that was fantastic, and really that goes to show you we felt like we had the more talented team, but Cibola came to play, and we almost got away with a loss on that one if we weren't careful. But I'll tell you, you look at this matchup and you think about who can do what. And while I really like what Coach Jones has done with his squad to put them in position here to be in a position to go to the Super Bowl and do some things, I just still think that Coach Cherry is going to finish the ride. I think they've done really well since starting off 0-2. A ton of injuries. They're healthy again. They've been able to string together, 7 straight victories. They did take the 1 seed out of their conference, didn't lose one conference game, including a victory against this team earlier in the year. And I just think Coach Cherry and his Volcano Vista team has too much experience, too much path that to finish the deal, to make 7 straight Super Bowls, which would be just a phenomenal record, kind of tied with the Ronnie Daniels era when they went to 7 straight. I think that's the kind of team you're talking about here. It's just a dynasty of a team that's going to end up making it back in. I think this game is tight. I think it comes down to a misstep on special teams, a turnover, like an extra point issue. They miss a 2-pointer, should have got it. 20-18, that kind of feel to it. I think that's what you're going to see here. Definitely a matchup that we weren't expecting. It's going to take place, but I think that little extra at the end, a little bit of experience, is going to tip the scales over to Coach Cherry and his squad. They'll make it in. On the other side, I'm sorry, Coach Perry. I think you're overwhelmed, overmatched, and unfortunately, I think this game gets away early and often. I think West Mesa has a point to prove. I don't think they've overlooked anyone. I think when they walk on the field, they're with the opponent in front of them. I think this one gets away early. I think this thing becomes, unfortunately, a blowout. And unfortunately, Rio Rancho, with that bad conference loss, ends up setting themselves up to play this really hot, dynamic West Mesa team, Coach Montano. So I like in the Super Bowl, rematch from last year where Coach Cherry absolutely dominated in the junior level when these two met last year. West Mesa, if you remember, went on that opening drive and took it all the way down, couldn't finish. 2 plays later, Coach Cherry was tossing the ball and end up getting in, and they just never looked back. It was a blowout victory for Coach Cherry and La Cueva last year. This year, these two teams will meet in the Super Bowl. I can see it happening again. West Mesa in, La Cueva in for the Varsity Super Bowl. I tell you, it's been an enjoying journey. Next Sunday, not this one, next Sunday for the Super Bowls, I'll have the privilege and honor of being the color commentator for all the Super Bowls from Mighty Mite up to Varsity. I look forward to having you tune in to ProView Networks and get a little taste. I have a good knowledge of the background of the game, and I'm excited to be able to present that to the viewing audience and be able to give a different perspective on youth football here in New Mexico. So until then, thank you for all your support, and I appreciate everything you've done for me and for the community at large in youth football here in the lovely state of New Mexico. Thank you.